I've been frequently asked to show a glimpse into my everyday life, and I've resisted making a video like this because, in reality, I live quite a slow and quiet life. I've crafted my life this way because, for me, the most important thing is to have space to just be. I spent the vast majority of my adult life working 60 to 70 hours a week, sometimes more, I have to scarily admit. Often working multiple jobs at once out of financial necessity, and this past few months I've slowed down as much as possible. I still have a lot of responsibilities, but I take every moment I can to rest, to create art, and to just bask in my immense love for nature. Much of my work is and has been remote, so I fortunately have been able to maintain a more quiet lifestyle, but my biggest focus these days is on living intentionally. And that's because I simply do not want to miss another day of being truly present and in my body. I thought I'd share what my day looks like, but in a unique manner, by also telling you the truth of what my life has really been like. And here it is. For most of my life, I have been incredibly mentally unwell. The first time I remember feeling immensely, devastatingly low was when I was 11. The way this has shown up in my life over the years has varied greatly, but doing the simplest of things each day has been a challenge for me every year that I can remember. I've been in therapy for the past 5 or 6 years, and I've always had really amazing and compassionate therapists. I did everything that they say to do to try and become well. There are so many moments in my life that are amazing, but for many of them, I wasn't exactly present. I tried so hard to be, but it felt like my body simply wouldn't let me. Or the feelings of presence were dependent on external factors and felt more like ecstatic euphoria that I knew would soon crash. It wasn't an organic, underlying state of peace and self-trust. Remaining outside of my body was the safer option, and so my body did everything it could to protect me because those younger parts of myself love me. And the safest option for a long time was to just leave, to hide, to avoid true closeness, because with closeness often comes loss. At one point a few years ago, my mental health difficulties became so severe that I couldn't leave the house for around 2 months. I was convinced that if I stepped foot outside of my door, something horrible would happen to me. In the past, I've been diagnosed with 3 different mental health conditions, and I think in many ways I was misdiagnosed or not fully diagnosed because the treatments sometimes helped a little bit, but none of the core wounds that I was experiencing were being addressed, so I was still struggling immensely. I know that diagnoses and labels are important to a lot of people, and I really respect that and honor that. But for me, it doesn't really matter what the label is, so long as the core of what's really going on is being acknowledged and treated, and that my quality of life is improving. Throughout my life, I have gotten into quite a bit of debt trying to treat my mental health, with a large portion of money going to therapy just so that I could feel well enough to be able to enjoy more moments in life, and be able to maintain everyday routines, which is really a basic human right, I feel. I've read well over 50 books on psychology. I've listened to endless podcasts and read countless articles. I've catapulted into self-compassion and loving kindness practices. I've been a Buddhist most of my life. I've spent so many moments meditating, exercising, eating nourishing food, everything that's meant to help. I've tried so many different types of therapy. I've developed an incredible awareness to know what's going on for me cognitively, and I've had this confirmed by all of my past therapists. But I simply was not getting better. For years, I was so caught up in intellectualizing the layers upon layers of trauma I experienced in my life that I was using this intellectualization as a way to avoid actually processing that trauma in my body on a somatic level. Because the body remembers, often for longer than the mind, and my body did not feel like a safe place to be, which is ironic because the body is actually the safest place to be. It can just sometimes be hard to convince the mind of that, but that has all started to shift this year. You may have noticed that in recent videos I seem brighter, more relaxed, happier, simply more myself, Some of you have even commented that I'm showing my personality, and that's because I am. For the earlier videos on this channel, I would often gather all of the strength I had in me to make them. I'm not saying I was inauthentic, but I was sometimes like a shadow of my true bright self, the loving, compassionate, caring, and kind woman that I had glimpses of throughout my life, but didn't often internally feel like. In many past videos, it's still been me, but I certainly had to mask a lot of what was really going on in my life. Sometimes before or after filming, I would just be sobbing profusely over things going on in my life. Not only my mental health, but I also had a lot of challenging life circumstances thrown in. I still look back on prior years and I have no idea how I've built this type of life or career for myself, even going through everything I was and have been for most of my life. It's been immensely challenging and sometimes exhausting, but somehow I've done it. People often incorrectly assume that I grew up with money. I didn't. This assumption actually really hurts to me because it feels like it invalidates how hard I've had to work to be where I am today. My family struggled immensely financially most of my life, and I even lived in my car or slept on friends' sofas for about a year of my life when I was 18. I've paid my way through all of my education, and I've been financially independent for all of my adult life. It's taken me so much to create this type of life for myself. So many things haven't worked out, and so many things have. The one key thing is that no matter how many times I felt completely and utterly defeated, I would use any remaining strength in me to regroup and I would try again. A few years ago, I learned about a term called complex PTSD. Sometimes it's also referred to as CPTSD. It presents with many symptoms that are in line with my past diagnoses that I did all of the treatments for and still wasn't feeling well most of the time. I have to express that the diagnoses I received are absolutely real and valid on their own. I'm not saying that they aren't, but simply that symptoms similar to those conditions can also be present when someone experiences complex PTSD. In my case, it was symptoms similar to what I had been in the past diagnosed with, which is depression, ADHD, and OCD. These conditions can of course also coexist, so they aren't mutually exclusive. But unfortunately, education surrounding complex PTSD isn't all that common, even in the mental health field, so it can get missed, and it does get missed a lot. I'm not a doctor, and so this isn't medical advice, but for me personally, I didn't start getting well until the complex PTSD was recognized and started being addressed. And that is thanks to my current therapist, who is an incredibly skilled EMDR and somatic therapist. They work primarily with people who have histories of complex trauma, and the other day in therapy, I broke down and started crying hysterically. I just said, "I'm so grateful for you, you have literally changed my whole life." And I meant every word of it down to my core. The funny thing is, a few years ago I actually did EMDR for trauma with a different therapist, but it didn't work for me. So I was a little hesitant going into it again. But I'm so glad I trusted my current therapist and I went for it. I think having a therapist you really relate with makes all the difference. I found that you have to really trust them or learn to trust them so that your body can unfold its own healing. When it comes to trauma, I think the body knows how to heal, but it often needs to be given the right environment and support to do so. The best piece of advice I've ever been given throughout my mental health journey is never stop seeking support. There were so many moments in my life where I was just done. I was ready to give up completely. I was exhausted, so tired of the sheer effort I'd exert just to have a somewhat peaceful existence, just to be able to be. And in those moments when I was ready to quit, those were the turning points for me. I would pick myself up and gather every ounce of strength I had left in me and keep seeking support, and I'm so glad that I did. As of right now, I'm still recovering. I still experience a lot of symptoms, mostly physical ones, interestingly enough, which can be super scary and very uncomfortable, but I have this hope in me. I can feel its warm and everlasting ember in the deepest parts of my heart. It slowly burns inside of me and it carries me through each day, through each hour, sometimes through each minute. It's this type of self-trust or trusting in my body to carry me through my life, of knowing that life will always have triggers, but I am equipped to navigate them. And this is why, for me, the ability to just be is such a monumental accomplishment. And that's why I will never again take just being for granted. What I'm most excited for is what my life is going to look like, what it's going to feel like in a few months from now, in a year from now that I'm actually feeling more safe in my body, now that joy has started to slowly creep back into the simplest of my moments. And I can really feel that joy too. I think our capacity to allow and joy is often a reflection of the state of our bodies. I've found that the less safe my body feels on a nervous system level, the less of a capacity that I have to truly experience joy. I see numbness and dissociation as the body just yelling, "This is it, this is my maximum capacity right now." Although it can be incredibly uncomfortable and frustrating and scary, it's really the body communicating with no malice. Really, it's just trying to be helpful and set a boundary. It can just turn maladaptive over time, and that's when it really hurts. So the fact that I can feel joy more often makes me feel at peace and makes me feel like I'm heading in the direction towards greater balance. I also feel like I have more capacity to give and help others. And at the end of the day, I've always just wanted to live a life of helping others, and I've done this in every way that I've been able to. And I'm going to, of course, continue to do so. In many ways, I'm a very private person. I feel it's vital to have separation between a public online career and your own personal life. There are so many things in my life that I cherish deeply, and they're just for me and my closest relationships. They aren't things that I will ever share publicly. My mental health, however, is not one of those things, because I feel like it is essential for me to serve as an example of ending any stigma around mental health. I have never been ashamed of being in therapy. I credit this to the type of environment I grew up in, actually, and I understand why so many people do feel shame when it comes to seeking mental health support, and it breaks my heart because therapy has quite literally given me my life back. Therapy is often viewed in our society as a last resort, as some type of weakness, as this massive thing to be horribly afraid of. I actually see therapy as a preventative measure, if of course it actually was made more accessible, as I very much recognize how hard it is for many to access mental health support, and that to me is devastating. In my experience, giving myself permission to heal has been a show of immense strength, resilience, and bravery. I will always think that sensitivity is strength, that vulnerability is strength, that emotions are strength, and everyone deserves to have the space and feeling of safety to express those aspects of themselves if they want to. I couldn't control what happened to me as a child, or as a teenager, or as an adult, but the support that I've received has shaped my future. The strength that I found inside of myself has also shaped my future. One of my biggest wishes for this world is that mental health support would be accessible to everyone, because it is essential care, and it can be completely life-altering. There is nothing quite like people receiving support to heal and feel well. So if you're going through a difficult time at the moment, firstly, I am so sorry, and I see you. I see your pain. And there is nothing to be ashamed of if you are feeling this way. I just ask that you please, please never stop seeking support. Support can look like many things, but at the end of the day, you deserve to live a life of joy and peace and safety and love. And whether or not you might see it, there are so many people in this world that care about you and also want you to never stop seeking support. And there are also so many who want to support you. Well, it feels really good to finally open up about all of this. Here's to the coming months of experiencing more joy, sharing even more through art, and most of all, having more space to just be. Thank you so much for watching and listening to me share my story, and I'll see you in 2 weeks for another video.